Today's episode is brought to you with the support of the Brain Collective in Harrogate. They're a brilliant team who specialise in helping people understand how their brains are functioning and how to optimise mental well-being. They work with everything from focus and sleep to stress and resilience, using gentle, non-invasive techniques like neurofeedback and brain mapping. What I love about it is that it's not about labels or diagnosis, it's about understanding your brain and what it needs to thrive. I've had the pleasure of speaking with people who've worked with them, and the feedback is always the same. They say they're supportive, empowering and eye-opening. So a big thank you to the Brain Collective for sponsoring this episode, and you can find out more about their work at thebraincollective.co.uk. Welcome to Happiness, Health, Relationships podcast. The podcast where small but powerful daily habits are your future self. I'm Angeline, your guide on this journey to cut through myths and misinformation on better health, deeper happiness and more aligned living through the 6 pillars of living medicine, which are stress management, nutrition, sleep, fitness, reducing addictive substances and healthy relationships. Each week, I interview experts in their field exploring real-life strategies, science-backed habits and soulful conversations to help you heal, grow and thrive. One day, one choice, one habit at a time. Because small daily habits are your future self, and your future starts now. Okay, I'm super excited to invite our guest this morning, Mary Hollis. She's an energy therapist, training as a psychoenergetic therapist, and she has an inspirational story. We're going to get to know about Mary's story from PTSD to now living through love and being pretty chilled, and all things. We're going to learn a bit about the work that Mary's journey really has taken her to. So I'm just excited because we've had a previous conversation and it's just an amazing story. And I love the work that you do now as well. So in helping others, you know, in things that they've struggled with through their own journeys. So welcome, first of all.
Thank you. And I'm super excited to be here. It's really lovely to be on your podcast. So I was a bit late to the party discovering your podcast and I'm now hooked. It's just so great. So thank you for asking me on.
Awesome. That's great. So, you know, we cover on the podcast all things living medicine, and Mary's area of expertise is really reducing stress, really. It is probably the main thing, but you know, your story as well has been about relationships as well, and you know, we know that if we've got a few healthy relationships, then we thrive, don't we? We're far more likely to thrive. So, okay, let's tell us just a little bit about the work that you do to start with, and then we'll get into the original story. We'll sort of go back to, you know, where it all started really. So, but I just want to touch on the work that you do first of all.
Okay, yeah. So I guess the easiest way to frame the work that I do would be to say that I'm an energy therapist. So I work with energy healing modalities. At the moment, so that includes being a Reiki teacher and practitioner, and also an emotion code practitioner. Now, the emotion code was designed by a chiropractor called Dr. Bradley Nelson in America, and it's a systematic method for finding and releasing trapped emotional energy in the body and the subconscious mind. So I'm now going on to train in the next levels of that. And then in future, I plan to also train in psychotherapy so that I will become what's termed a psychoenergetic therapist. from my own experience, my own journey, I found that the two go really, really well together. That psychotherapy, talking therapies and general counselling are wonderful for helping us at conscious level to reframe what's going on, make different connections to it, and change the way we are going forwards. But sometimes I found that some things are still stuck, old kind of patterns are playing out. And that's where I guess I started to discover energy healing and how that helps us remove some of the deep things that are stuck in our body and our subconscious mind. So yeah, that's my plan going forwards, that I become psychoenergetic therapist and help people with both of those.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right that, the psychotherapy side of things and counseling is really good. And it's no coincidence that within the 6 pillars of living medicine, we've got exercise,
Yeah.
which helps to generate those good chemicals in the brain.
Yeah.
But it's also a release of, that stuff that we will often work through on the psycho side of things, the way that we think and feel. But yeah, I think that the two together, if we can develop some kind of practice of exercise or bodily practices, which we're going to get into
Yes.
later on, in our 3-part series, we'll be getting into some practices. You're going to go through some practices with us. So
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to that, helping us to get into that relaxed state. Lots of people struggle with sleep these days, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Where the body is in a stressed state. We've got such busy lives, and so sleep is such a common problem now, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think a key indicator of how stressed we are. And I think just relating back to what you were saying there about kind of movement and exercise and how that really helps us to release. And thinking back also to the episode you had with Dina Shale and how she was talking about the physical element of trauma and stress. I think that there's many methods to kind of release. So the emotion code and Reiki and the things I do are just some of those, but absolutely with kind of being active, working somatically, it really helps to move things through and kind of bring us back, reset our system.
Absolutely, yeah. My sister has got me out running, which I never thought I would do.
Fabulous.
It's not, but I've only ever tried to run on my own and hate it. And I still hate it because, I run a little bit when I'm on the way to meet her. And I don't like it on my own. I just don't like it. But with my sister, it's good because we have a good old chat on the way. And so, that works for me. But I've actually started to really enjoy it. So
Yeah,
I never thought I'd say that. So,
I love running too. It's one of my ways of letting go and kind of quite meditative, I think it can be when you get in your stride and you get in your breath, when you find your pattern with your breath and you can just kind of let go.
any form of regulating your breathing. We had Stuart Calling on the podcast as well. The mindfulness element of that.
Yeah.
Anything, I think, where we need to regulate our breathing is so good. It's powerful. So good for us, isn't it, physically?
Yeah, and from a kind of spiritual, I suppose, energetic perspective, breath is that link between energy and matter. So it's such an important fundamental. Each time we're taking new breath in, we're bringing in new oxygen, but also energy. And then on the out breath, it's our natural way of letting go.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, really. It's all in the small detail, isn't it? We talk about well-being, obviously, on the podcast, and what I'm finding from talking to different people, it's in the small detail. Yeah, how simple is that? Using our breath.
Yeah.
Spending 5 minutes to do some, slowing our breathing down, just being aware of our breathing. It's
Even a single breath, a power breath, just taking that pause. Yeah. And like you're saying, the detail, also just intention. I think, just holding the thought, I'm now releasing or I'm now feeling calm. It makes a big difference.
Absolutely. So take us back to where it all began. Tell us a bit about your experiences growing up, because this is very relevant to the work that you do now. Your whole journey really has brought you to a place of authenticity, really. You've really grown into what you feel is your purpose, what you were, what you've lived through has sort of brought you to where you are now. So yeah, tell us a bit more about your experiences.
So I think for me, growing up, there was always a lot of love and, some really joyful stuff. I grew up rurally and had lots of kind of space to roam around, and loved animals and did quite a lot of riding and, fun stuff. But there was also a lot of challenges, and I don't think I really appreciated the impact of those until I was older, and to actually recognize that really what I lived through, that there was quite a lot of abuse and dysfunction. And one of the outcomes of that was PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or it's now, there's a shift. Some people are working to change that terminology to post-traumatic stress response, because there's a recognition now that actually everyone who goes through those kind of traumatic, stressful situations has the same response. So it's not a disorder, it's just a natural response to that. But I didn't become aware of that until I was well into my 30s. And I think when you've lived with something for such a long time, it's just, you think of it as your normal. So for me, I think I probably learnt to panic in the womb. And I think there's many other people out there who have had the same kind of thing. And then you get wired into those patterns of kind of living in fight, flight, freeze, etc. And so I'm picking that story, reframing it, resetting has been a big part of my adult journey. Yeah. So in a nutshell, I guess that was kind of my experience.
Just a quick pause in the episode to let you know about something special. If you're enjoying these conversations, you'll love what's waiting for you over on the brand new Member Vaults page. You'll find free downloads, bonus podcast episodes, and a chance to explore my VIP club. A supportive space packed with exclusive resources. We'll have monthly Zoom sessions or online video sessions, and a private podcast feed just for members. So head over to angelineht.co.uk to dive in. So that's angelineht.co.uk. Everything's in one place, and it's all made with you in mind. Okay, now back to the episode. What were the impacts of that, do you think, that you were kind of in that state of fight or flight for many years? How did that impact your everyday life, your relationships, your everything, really?
Yeah. I guess for me, the thing with that was, it took me a long time to realize that there was, because I was kind of constantly in red alert, that was like my normal. So I never really felt kind of settled or secure, I suppose. And I'm very grateful of always been able to work and function to a certain degree. And of course, there's, a lot of people who have PTSD who are kind of unable to, far worse impact in that way. But that's not to downplay either people who do have PTSD and are, kind of working, etc. Because I think sometimes that gets a bit lost. And for me, like I say, it took me a long time to recognize what's happening. So that constant state of red alert, running on adrenaline all the time and cortisol. And I suppose that thing of when you're in fight, flight and freeze, that you can be in like both hyperarousal and hypoarousal at the same time. So when we're experiencing trauma, it pushes us outside of our window of tolerance. So that comfy place where everything feels okay and we can just rock up and be ourselves. But if we're experiencing chronic ongoing trauma, we're not in that place anymore. So we can be in a heightened state with a hyperarousal, so the more of the fight and flight kind of stuff going on, or in the hypoarousal, more of the freeze. And I would find myself often, now I recognize that I would be in all of those I'm sure other people can relate to this. So if I was in a meeting, for example, I'd be having palpitations at even thought of having to say my name. Mm-hmm. I'd be shaking. I'd used to put my left hand under my right leg to physically kind of brace myself so I wouldn't be shaking if I wanted to take a drink of water or something, or otherwise my hand would be really shaky. And I used to suffer from hyperhidrosis, so nervous sweating. And that in itself would then fuel more adrenaline because I would be really concerned that that would be noticeable. So there was that side of things going on. But there was also the freeze response. So part of my brain would be shutting down and I wouldn't be able to get no words out, or I wouldn't be able to remember people's names, even if they were colleagues I'd known for years. If I was in a meeting or a presentation situation, sometimes that would just go. And that's really debilitating. And I think then you're stuck in this place where you're conscious that you're not really being able to show people who you truly are. And you might overcompensate for that by trying to people please or overachieve, overgive. I think another element of me during that time was not having good boundaries for those reasons. And then not really being able to put a boundary in place until something was really, not okay. Like if someone was maybe not respectful or taking advantage for a long time, you suddenly get to the end of your tether and then it comes out in a big rush. So, and then people, of course, be like, oh, you're angry or you're this or you're that. And I think it took me a long time to learn that emotional intelligence and to recognize things. So in my 30s, I had some really wonderful psychotherapy. And the psychotherapist there explained to me about the theory of subpersonalities, almost like actors on a stage. And I started to see myself in that way, that so if I was out on a run or maybe like riding or something, I would be in that nice, relaxed state. But if I was walking up to a meeting, then the actor that was coming on stage then would be, kind of hyper merry inside. And I also recognized the subpersonality that I refer to fondly now as my bull, my inner bull that would come out and protect me, like the secondary emotion of anger where underneath you're feeling really scared or whatever. And that was a bit that, sometimes like in the workplace, if I was really stressed, maybe that would come out. And I think kind of being able to identify all those parts of myself has been really powerful. And for other people, and I really want to, stress that and share that with people, that it's okay to have these things and to kind of hold them in self-love. Because the more that we do that and the more we can own who we truly are, the more that we can bring those subpersonalities, those actors on the stage into like a harmonious kind of way of being. And the quicker we recognize that we're feeling angry as a way of protection because someone's taking the pee or whatever, that we can then deal with that and we can honor and respect ourselves. So I think that's been the big transition for me and still ongoing, that journey from being this person who was like rabbit in the headlights, always frightened, always fearful of being judged, not being good enough. And I suppose, behind that sat the experience of years of abusive behaviors. So that was my way of trying to protect myself from any of that happening. And now, kind of shifting into this a bit more chilled kind of.
Absolutely. That's really interesting what you're saying. And, just thinking about how exhausting that is actually. And we all have those different parts of ourselves. I think people start to get scared when we start to think about different personalities and but we all have those different parts of ourselves, don't we, where we are more confident in certain situations, but in some situations we're really not. And I can relate to that on to a certain degree, in a meeting where I would be worrying about if I had to say something, and then by the time, or I think, I've got something to contribute here, and I'd be waiting to get a word in because being polite, didn't want to interrupt, and then by the time I'd got around to speak. I couldn't get my words out.
Yes.
So, to varying degrees, probably lots of people experience that in different situations. And we really do exhaust ourselves with this stuff, don't we? But like you say, it's a protection from, if you have experienced even just criticism growing up. We don't have to have had a terrible childhood at all, really. It can just make us feel that we're not good enough, or that what we have to say isn't important, or, lots of people have feelings of that, or imposter syndrome, those types of things. It's so common.
Oh gosh, yeah.
That I think a lot of people will relate to that it's exhausting. And then, or if you've had an interaction with somebody and then you come away and you're worrying about, wonder what they thought, or you lying awake at night replaying it over. The lots of people do struggle with that, really. So being in that stressed state all the time, it's got such a knock-on effect in your everyday life. And I think it was interesting as well, because when we do witness that person in the meeting who just talks a lot, or talks over people, or who is angry, there's often a reason for that. There's a something behind that, isn't there?
Yes.
Why that person can't be just chilled and be relaxed in that scenario. So absolutely, that makes a lot of sense, what you were saying there.
And I think just coming back to when you're saying about subpersonalities, that can be a bit of a scary concept for us if we first hear it, because we think of the extremes of that, where people suffer with schizophrenia, for example. But we're not talking about it in that way, in a clinical term. We're talking about it just like, so we're all made up of different parts. And so, it's this kind of, for me, Mary the professional, Mary the daughter, or the partner, or the whoever, these different facets of ourselves, and how we behave in that way, in those different roles. I mean, how we behave in those different roles. But also kind of in amongst that, I suppose what I was drawing out particularly was the elements, our subpersonalities, that we maybe run from or hide, and that's often referred to as our shadow self. And those bits that we're not owning. And so where you're saying, like, someone at work, or who is acting out a certain way, that often that's from their shadow, that maybe the person who's coming across really dominant or arrogant is actually kind of in a state of fear or less than. So they're projecting the opposite of that. It's like we're always trying to get back to balance. So kind of, I think, recognizing, giving ourselves permission to recognize the whole of who we are, and knowing that all those parts of ourselves, so that the angry Mary I referred to earlier, the bull, that thank God that part of me evolved, because if it hadn't, goodness knows I would have lost all of my self-esteem, or all of my sense of strength to carry on, or, but I recognize that my bull, developed because of some pretty extreme circumstances.
That's the end of part 1 in our 3-part series with Mary Hollis. I'm really enjoying this inspirational story, from PTSD to living through love and being pretty chilled. So I can't wait to get into the next 2 episodes where we continue our conversation. So I'll see you over the next couple of weeks for some more from Mary Hollis, where we're going to be getting some strategies on feeling more chilled and strategies on how to relax.